Can you hear me now?
Now I can, yes.
Okay, sorry. 32.
Yes.
Oh, of the descendants of Joseph, of the descendants of Ephraim, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house as listed by name, aged 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Ephraim, 40,500. Of the descendants of Manasseh, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house as listed by name, aged 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Manasseh, 32,200. Of the descendants of Benjamin, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, aged 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Benjamin, 35,400. Of the descendants of Dan, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, aged 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Dan, 62,700. Of the descendants of Asher, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, aged 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Asher, 41,500. Of the descendants of Naphtali, the registration of the clans of their ancestral house is listed by name, aged 20 years and over, all who were able to bear arms, those enrolled from the tribe of Naphtali, 53,400.
Thank you so much. Jim, would you like to continue there at verse 44?
Thank you, Rabbi. Those are the enrollments recorded by Moses and Aaron and by the chieftains of Israel, who were 12 in number, one man to each ancestral house. All the Israelites aged 20 years and over, enrolled by ancestral houses, all those in Israel who were able to bear arms, all who were enrolled came to 603,550. The Levites, however, were not recorded among them by the ancestral tribe, for God had spoken to Moses, saying, "Do not on any account enroll the tribe of Levi, or take census of them with the Israelites. You shall put the Levites in charge of the tabernacle of the pact, all its furnishings and everything that pertains to it. They shall carry the tabernacle and all its furnishings, and they shall tend it, and they shall camp around the tabernacle. When the tabernacle is set out, the Levites shall take it down, and when the tabernacle is to be pitched, the Levites shall set it up. Any outsider who encroaches shall be put to death. The Israelites shall encamp troop by troop, each man with his division and each under his standard. The Levites, however, shall camp around the tabernacle of the pact. That wrath may not strike the Israelite community. The Levites shall stand guard around the tabernacle of the pact. The Israelites did accordingly, just as God had commanded Moses, so they did.
Oh, thanks so much, Jim. Let me invite Dave if you'd like to continue with the start of chapter 2.
Jay or Dave?
Dave, yes.
Okay. Chapter 2.
2.
Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "The Israelites shall camp each man with his standard under the banners of their ancestral house. They shall camp around the tent of meeting at a distance. Camped on the front or east side, the standard of the division of Judah, troop by troop, chieftain of the Judites, Nashon, son of Amminadab. His troop as enrolled 74,600. Camping next to it, the tribe of Issachar, chieftain of the Issacharites, Nathan, son of Zuar. His troop as enrolled 54,400. The tribe of Zebulun, chieftain of the Zebulunites, Eliab, son of Helon. His troop as enrolled is 57,400. The total enrolled in the division of Judah, 186,400 for all troops. These shall march first. On the south, the standard of the division of Reuben, troop by troop, chieftain of the Reubenites, Elizur, son of Shedur. His troop as enrolled, 46,500. Camping next to it, the tribe of Simeon, chieftain of the Simeonites, Shelomiel, son of Zurishaddai. His troop has enrolled 59,300. And the tribe of Gad, chieftain of the Gadites, Eliaph, son of Ruel. His troop has enrolled 45,650. The total enrolled in the division of Reuben, 151,450 for all troops. They shall march second.
Thank you, Dave. Mark Levinstein, would you like to read a little bit starting at verse 17 of chapter 2?
Thank you, Rabbi. Then midway between the divisions, the tent of meeting, the division of the Levites shall move. As they camp, so shall they march, each in position by their standards. On the west, the standard of the division of Ephraim, troop by troop. Excuse me. Chieftain of the Ephraimite, Elishama, son of Amihud. His troop is enrolled 40,500. Next to it, the tribe of Manasseh. Chieftains of the Manassites, Gamaliel, son of Pedazur. His troop is enrolled 32,200. The tribe of Benjamin, chieftain of the Benjaminites, Abidan, son of Gidoni. His troop has enrolled 35,400. The total enrolled in the division of Ephraim, 108,100 for all troops. These shall march third. On the north, the standard of the division of Dan, troop by troop, chieftain of the Danites, Azahar, son of Amishadai. His troop has enrolled 62,700. Camping next to it, the tribe of Asher, chieftain of the Asherites, Pagileel, son of Achron. His troop has enrolled 41,500. And the tribe of Naphtali, chieftain of the Naphtalites, Ahira, son of Enan. His troop is enrolled 53,400. The total enrolled in the division of Dan, 157,600. These shall march last by their standards. Those are the enrollments of the Israelites by ancestral houses. The total enrolled in the divisions for all troops, 603,550. The Levites, however, were not recorded among the Israelites as the Lord had commanded Moses. The Israelites did accordingly, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. So they camped by their standards, and so they marched, each with his clan according to his ancestral house.
Thank you so much, Mark. Justin, would you like to pick up there at the very start of chapter 3?
Thank you, Rabbi. I'm getting to the right place. These are the descendants of Aaron and Moses on the day that the Lord spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai. These are the names of the sons of Aaron: Nadab, the firstborn, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. These are the names of the sons of Aaron, the appointed Kohanim, whom he consecrated to serve as Kohanim. Nadab and Abihu died before the Lord when they brought alien fire before the Lord in the Sinai desert, and they had no children. Eleazar and Ithamar, however, served as Kohanim in the presence of Aaron, their father. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Bring forth the tribe of Levi and present them before Aaron the Cohen, that they may serve him. They shall keep his charge and the charge of the entire community before the tent of meeting to perform the service of the Mishkan. They shall take charge of all the vessels of the tent of meeting and the charge of the children of Israel to perform the service of the Mishkan. You shall give over the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They shall be wholly given over to him from the children of Israel. You shall appoint Aaron and his sons, and they shall keep their kehuna. Any outsider, non-Kohen, who approaches shall be put to death.
Thank you so much, Justin. Linda, if you have a copy of a text, would you like to read a little bit?
Sure, thanks, Rabbi.
Sure, we're at verse 11 of chapter 3.
Mhm. So Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, as for me, I've taken the Levites from among the children of Israel in place of all firstborns among the children of Israel who have opened the womb, and the Levites shall be mine. For all the firstborns are mine, since the day I smote all the firstborns in the land of Egypt, I sanctified for myself all the firstborns of Israel, both man and beast, they shall become mine, for I am Hashem. And Hashem spoke to Moshe in the Sinai desert, saying, count the children of Levi according to their father's house, according to their families. Count all males from the age of 1 month and upward. And so Moshe counted them according to Hashem's word, just as he was commanded. And these were the names of Levi's sons, Gershon, Kohat, and Merari. The names of the sons of Gershon, according to their families, were Libni and Shimei. And the sons of Kohat, according to their families, were Amram, Ithar, Hebron, and Utziel. And the sons of Merari, according to their families, were Mahli and Mushi. These are the families of Levi according to their father's houses. For Gershon, the Libnite family, and the Shemite family, these are the Gershonite families. Their sum was made according to the number of males from the age of 1 month and upward. The tally amounted to 7,500. The Gershonite families shall camp behind the Mishkan to the west. The prince of the father's house of the Gershonites is Eliasaph, the son of Lael. The charge of the sons of Gershon in the tent of meeting, the Mishkan, the tent, its cover, and the screen for the entrance to the tent of meeting. The hangings of the courtyard, the screen at the entrance to the courtyard, which is around the Mishkan, and the altar, its ropes, as well as all the work involved.
Thank you
For
so
Koh-
much, Linda. That's so beautifully read. Thank you so much. Lovely. And then let me invite David and Susan, if you'd like to continue there at verse 27.
Yes, Rabbi, thank you. To Kohath belonged the clan of the Amramites, the clan of the Israelites, the clan of the Hebronites, and the clan of the Uzzielites. These were the clans of the Kohathites. All the listed males from the age of 1 month up came to 8,600, attending to the duties of the sanctuary. The clans of the Kohathites were to camp along the south side of the tabernacle. The chieftain of the ancestral house of the Kohathite clans was Elizaphan, son of Utziel. Their duties comprised the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, and the sacred utensils that were used with them, and the screen, all the service connected with these. The head chieftain of the Levites was Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, in charge of those attending to the duties of the sanctuary.
And Merari had the Mahlite family and the Mushite family. These are the Merarite families, and their counts by the number of every male from 1 month old and up, 6,200. And the chieftain of the father's house for the Merizite families was Zuriel, son of Abihail. They were to camp on the side of the tabernacle to the north. And the responsibility of the charge of the children of the Merari was the tabernacle's frames and its bars and its columns and its bases and all the equipment and all its service. And the courtyard's columns all around and their bases and the pegs and their cords. And those who camped in front of the tabernacle on the east, in front of the tent of meeting to the east, were Moses and Aaron and his sons, keeping the charge of the holy place for the charge of the children of Israel. And the outsider who will come close shall be put to death. All the counts of the Levites that Moses and Aaron made by Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh's word, by their families, every male from a month old and up, were 22,000.
Thank you so much. Robert, would you like to continue there, verse 40 of chapter 3?
Yes, thank you. And the Lord said unto Moses, number all the firstborn of the males of the children of Israel from a month old and upward, and take the number of their names. And thou shalt take the Levites for me, I am the Lord, instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites, instead of all the firstlings among the cattle of the children of Israel. And Moses numbered, as the Lord commanded him, all the firstborn among the children of Israel. And all the firstborn males by the number of names from a month old and upward, of those that were numbered of them, were 22,213. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, take the Levites instead of all the firstborn among the children of Israel, and the cattle of the Levites instead of their cattle, and the Levites shall be mine. I am the Lord. And for those that are to be redeemed of the 213 of the firstborn of the children of Israel, which are more than the Levites, thou shalt even take 5 shekels apiece by the poll. After the shekel of the sanctuary shalt thou take them. The shekel is 20 gerahs. And thou shalt give the money wherewith the odd number of them is to be redeemed unto Aaron and to his sons. And Moses took the redemption money of them that were over and above them that were redeemed by the Levites. Of the firstborn of the children of Israel took he the money, 1,365 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary. And Moses gave the money of them that were redeemed unto Aaron and to his sons, according to the word of the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses.
Thank you, Robert. And Catherine, would you like to continue at the very start of chapter 4?
Thank you, Rabbi. Sorry about that. Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, take a separate census of the Kohathites among the Levites by the clans of their ancestral house from the age of 30 years up to the age of 50, all who are subject to service to perform tasks for the tent of meeting. This is the responsibility of the Kohathites in the tent of meeting, the most sacred objects. At the breaking of camp, Aaron and his sons shall go in and take down the screening curtain and cover the ark of the pact with it. They shall lay a covering of dolphin skin over it and spread a cloth of pure blue on top, and they shall put its poles in place. Over the table of display, they shall spread a blue cloth. They shall place upon it the bowls, ladles, jars, and the libation jugs, and the regular bread shall rest upon it. They shall spread over these a crimson cloth, which they shall cover with a covering of dolphin skin, and they shall put the poles in place.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Julia, would you like to read a little bit? We're now at verse 9 of chapter 4. Okay. Okay, we'll come back and let me invite Norman. Would you like to read? We're at verse 9 of chapter 4.
Then they shall take a blue cloth and cover it, the lampstand for lighting, with its lamps, its tongues, its fire pans, as well as the oil vessels that are used in its service. They shall put it and all its furnishing into a covering of dolphin skin, which they shall then place on a carrying frame. Next, they shall spread a blue cloth over the altar of gold and cover it with a covering of dolphin skin. They shall put its poles in place. They shall take all the service vessels with which the service in the sanctuary is performed, put them into a blue cloth and cover them with a covering of dolphin skin, which they shall then place on a carrying frame. They shall remove the ashes from the copper altar and spread a purple cloth over it. Upon it, they shall place all the vessels that are used in its service, the fire pans, the flesh hooks, the scrapers, and the basins, all the vessels of the altar, and over it they shall spread a covering of dolphin skin, and they shall put its poles in place.
Thank you so much, Norman. Margot, would you like to continue there at verse 15? Margot, if you'd like to share with us, you'll need to unmute. Thank you.
Let's unmute.
There you
No?
go. That's it.
Oh, okay. When Aaron and his sons, I was reading to myself. When Aaron and his sons had finished covering the sacred objects and all the furnishings of the sacred objects at the breaking of a camp, only then shall the Kohenites come and lift them so that they do not come in contact with the sacred objects and the dye. These things in the tent of meetings shall be porterage of the Kohenites. Responsibility shall rest with Eleazar, son of Aaron, Aaron the priest, for the lighting oil, the aromatic incense, the regular meal offering, and the anointing oil. Responsibility for the whole tabernacle and for everything consecrated that is in it or in its vessels.
Margot, thank you so much. Mark Thompson, would you like to read our concluding verses there, starting with verse 17?
I would like to, but tonight I can't because of my eyes.
Very good. I hope your eyesight is better. Let me invite Deborah, would you like to read our concluding verses there?
Thank you very much. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aharon, saying, "Do not let the group of Kohathite clans be cut off from the Levites. Do this with them that they may live and not die when they approach the most sacred objects. Let Aharon and his sons go in and assign each of them to his duties and to his porterage. But let not the Kohathites go inside and witness the dismantling of the sanctuary, lest they die."
Oh, Deborah, thank you so much, and thank you so much, everyone. That concludes the entirety of our weekly Torah portion. I'd like to share with you a little bit of a focus study, and then we'll open it for our collective and collaborative conversation about our Torah portion. If you have a copy of the study sheet, I invite you to take it out at this time. It's a study sheet I've titled "In Endless Transition." So we'll explore how I got to that notion about an endless transition. And on the one hand, our Torah portion begins with some kind of a census that is being taken of all those males who are old enough to bear arms, and everyone is organized according to their families, and all the families are organized according to the tribes to which their families belong, and all those tribes are arrayed around a form of a battle line of march around the Mishkan itself. So on the one hand, this array of organization and tents and banners all seems oriented towards getting ready to do battle. As we have read and studied the Torah together, we've recognized that there's always more than the apparent and surface meaning of the text that we're reading. There's always multiple dimensions to what is being placed before us, and we're invited to dig into the depths of what might be there, as well as reading with intensity the surface words as well. For me, I start this year's study by looking at from chapter 2, verse 2, these words. Each of the children of Israel shall camp with his standard, diglo, under the banner of their ancestral house. So the key word for me there was this word diglo, and we're going to explore that notion of dagel, what that is all about. And so we have this midrash that's in number 2 that picks up on that same word. When God revealed God's self on Mount Sinai, 22,000 angels descended with God, and they were all arrayed under separate banners. As it is said, preeminent Dagul among myriads, Song of Songs. When Israel saw them arrayed under separate banners, they began to long for banners. God immediately told Moses, "Go arrange them under banners as they have desired." Therefore it says, "He brought me to the banquet house, and his banner diglo of love is upon me." So what intrigued me here is that this midrash is picking up on this word for a banner or standard, dagel, and is expanding upon what that is really all about by quoting 2 verses from the Song of Songs. Now, the Song of Songs, of course, is a bit of sacred erotic poetry that finds its way into our sacred text. It's on the surface, it's about a couple, a young couple who are enthralled with one another. And really all they can see is, they don't see the world around them, all they can see is one another, and they're enraptured with one another, they're enwrapped in one another, and they are intoxicated with one another. And in that intoxication, in that intimacy, these words having to do with a banner or standard crops up. This word preeminent is dagul. This is from the same word that we get diglo, his standard, among myriads. So there's something about this notion of being displayed, if you will, of having some kind of signification that is not just about armies marching into battle. There's something about it that also has to do with intimacy, sexuality perhaps, eroticism, close embrace. And again, the Midrash goes on and quotes this second verse that is saying, when God said to Moses, arrange them under banners, they quote this other verse from Song of Songs. He brought me to the banquet house, and his banner, diglo, of love is upon me. So here, in the Song of Songs, this banner is not just a standard being carried by soldiers into battle. It is some kind of blanket that is covering up these people who are in love and the embrace in their intimacy. So it's fascinating to me that the rabbis through this midrash are taking this notion of what we're seeing on the surface appears to be everyone getting ready for battle and to marching and in that kind of an engagement. And they are flipping and say there's another dimension to it, which is the being enwrapped in intimacy and love. Okay. So I would like to take this, explore a little bit this notion about being in their encampments and having these banners. And I would like to now introduce our artist, and we'll see what something new our artist can share with us about what else might be happening here in this text. So our artist is a contemporary Italian artist, Francesco Clemente. And Clemente was born in Naples in 1952. He was born into a rather aristocratic noble family, and he, from a very early age, he paints, he writes poetry, and eventually he has his, he goes to art school, he drops out of art school, has his first solo exhibition at the very young, early age, I think it was of about 19. And then shortly thereafter, that first solo exhibition, he embarks upon a rather nomadic life, not only nomadic in terms of traveling across spans of geography, but also nomadic in the sense of exploring a variety of cultures. And in particular, he goes to Afghanistan in 1972 with a friend, and he immerses himself in Sufi mysticism, trying to understand that. He also, at the same time, meets with a variety of weavers and other artisans in Afghanistan. And then a couple of years later, he goes with a friend to India, where he studies Sanskrit, he studies Vedic texts, and he studies at the Theosophical Society in Madras. And so he's exploring all this, I would call it non-European spirituality. And he brings all that back, in addition to having studied with other artisans and sign painters and so forth. He brings all that rich exploration back with him that informs his artwork from that point on. And then in 2012, between 2012 and 2015, he engages in the construction of an enormous installation piece. It ends up occupying 30,000 square feet, and it is an installation that consists of 6 huge painted tents, 4 sculptures, and 19 paintings. And he calls this entire installation encampment. And at the one point in this encampment, he has a sculpture. He has 4 sculptures, sun, moon, earth, and hunger. And on the hunger sculpture, he has words that are from a work by a French philosopher and filmmaker, Guy Debord, who wrote a book called Society of the Spectacle. And I have a quote from that in number 4 here on the sheet. So Debord writes, "The spectator feels at home nowhere because the spectacle is everywhere. The more the spectator contemplates, the less he lives. The more he accepts himself in the dominant images of need, the less he understands his own existence and desires." This is the worded message that Francisco Clemente places on a pillar, a sculpture within this encampment. What Debord is speaking of is his sense that modern society is a civilization of alienation of human beings from their means of subsistence, that we have become a world that does not provide for its own self, that is primarily invested in consumerism, in chasing after goods and possessions to fill some kind of hunger, some kind of need. So what Francisco Clemente has done with this enormous installation piece, in a sense, he has acknowledged with this sculpture and this quote from Debord that yes, we are beings in part that are driven by the anxiety of being ever without. And we chase after those things that will fill some kind of hunger that we have within us. And in the world of consumerism and alienation, of course, that hunger is never satisfied because it is driven by an anxiety that has nothing to do with physical reality. It has everything to do with a sense of dislocation and exile and separation. And so Francisco Clemente creates this work as a way in which he acknowledges it and then seeks to interrupt that drivenness based upon anxiety of need. And he takes us into these tents, various kinds of tents would have different themes, all of which have these striking colors. They have human figures. Some of the figures are alone, acknowledging the isolation that exists in human existence, and other figures are coupling and they are together, indicating the capacity to join with another human being. And they are arranged in such a way as to kind of take us through a passage, through the passage of all these points, until we can finally not only experience and acknowledge our drivenness, but also to take us inside, if you will, tents of hospitality, which relieve us, for at least for a while, of this sense, and have us acknowledge that there is another possibility. So let's look at what Clemente himself says. And this is in number 3 on the sheet. The value of images is to remind the self of its limitations and at the same time of the possibility of an endless journey. Every single moment of the unfolding experience of the work encampment is just a pretext to move on, to move forward from that moment. It's never supposed to be a beginning or an ending. It's just supposed to be a transition. So Clemente has these tents that serve to progress us on a journey that's really meant to be a spiritual journey of development. And it is a development that, as he just mentions, is never done. It is ever ongoing. So what fascinates me is to think then about, do the tents that we're reading about in Parshat Bamidbar, do they only represent the tents of people who are wandering, who are separated and in exile in between Egypt and the Promised Land? Do they only represent the gathering places of people who are about to go to war? Or could the tents also represent the possibility of portals, of going up in a passage of development from one state of existence, one state of being to another? And what fascinates me is that these tents, these encampments in our portion are arrayed around the Mishkan. So the Mishkan, if you will, is that centering piece that reminds everyone why they are there together. And the Mishkan represents both a site of Levitical rituals, those rituals that are engaged in led by the priests. It also represents the possibility of the indwelling presence of God. And the indwelling presence of God within the Jewish tradition is most keenly enacted as a sacred ritual, if you will, with Shabbat. And Shabbat, what Shabbat represents, as Clemente's tents represent, a kind of disruption of our sense that all there is an endless drive driven by anxiety and need. Shabbat represents the notion of you can take time out in your life to let go of the anxiety of need, because everything you truly need to feel fulfilled is with you. You don't have to work on Shabbat. Everything will be provided that will really and truly sustain you. And so the Shabbat represents, if you will, breaking that cycle of only moving through life driven by hunger and need, and represents instead the moving through life driven by desire. And desire, which is what we saw in our Midrash, if you remember, God immediately told Moses, go arrange them under banners as they have desired. Desire is, I think, not the same thing as need. Desire, as it occurs certainly in the Song of Songs, is not about anxiety. It's not about an urge to dominate, an urge to possess, an urge to conquest. It's about a desire to conjoin with another in the most intimate way possible. It is that desire which ultimately leads not to the destruction of life, which the anxiety-driven need can. No, desire ultimately leads to the possibility of new life, that level of intimacy. So I just want to play with this notion about what else might be going on here with these tents, these banners, and so forth. And with that, I'd like to conclude my sharing with you by looking on the back side of our study sheet with from Rilke's Sonnets to Orpheus. Rilke wrote, "One who pours oneself out like a stream is acknowledged at last by knowledge, and she leads him enchanted through the harmonious country that finishes often with starting and with ending begins." For me, the message is the fulfillment and peace we seek does not come from without. It is not from some knowledge that we're lacking. That wisdom that we truly will fulfill us is within us and always has been. The journey turns out to be a return to origin, though as a result of that journey, both we and that origin are encountered as something new. So with that, I'd love to know what you experienced and reflected upon as we had our journey through our Torah portion together. If you raise your hand, I'd so love to call upon you. Yes, Rose, please go ahead.
Two things. One, I'd like to address what you said, Rabbi, about desire and anxiety. And I think that the 10th commandment about not coveting really says it all, because the coveting, you wonder whether somebody wants not what what they want versus what they need, is that great theologian Mick Jagger differentiated. So, I think that there's something there, that there is this anxiety about worrying about not having enough and feeling that somebody else is getting more than you. That's one thing about the desire. But I'm thinking this whole Parsha, it's really about, and I'm thinking about wolves when they get together at night to go out and hunt. The first thing they do, they howl, and everybody gets together and they're howling, and then they establish their ranks. And human men do this too in meetings. Not so much women, but men do this. Like, who's the top dog? Whose relationship with somebody else? Because I think, that these social animals, and to some degree, some of the primates do this too, is before you do a task, you have to establish who's on top, who's related to whom, who's dominant, who's, lower on the chain, to kind of establish that before you say, well, okay, now that we know who everybody is, let's plan whatever we're going to do. And I think that Bnei Yisrael are commanded to do this, to go through this exercise, but it's a dual battle. I think it's a military battle, but they're also talking about a spiritual or religious battle, that they're all around the Mishkan. And so they're relating to each other, but basically they're also, the central point of reference is the Mishkan. So you've got a military, a sensible military thing. You have this whole count of people and how many and things like that. But you're also talking about the relationship to one another, but kind of triangulating with the Mishkan.
Beautiful. So here's a couple of things that you made me think about. One of which is that the first and primal crime that gets committed in Torah is when Cain kills Abel. And he kills Abel essentially because he says, the world isn't big enough for the two of us. And so you got to go, because if you're here, I'm diminished.
Life is a zero-sum game.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing, and thank you so much for bringing up not coveting. So Rabbi Lawrence Kushner has this beautiful little setting about that, in which he says one it's better to read, thou you will not covet, not as a commandment, but as a promise. Meaning that if you follow this way of life, you won't covet because you won't feel a lack of anything. You will feel connected and integrated and fulfilled.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's what it means.
Yes, and real quickly, you've really opened up more doors for me there. Thank you so much. Lo echsar, that you from Psalm 23, you will not lack. What I noticed for the first time ever, after having read it so many times over the years, is that that same phrase is used in Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor, where it says her husband, Lo Yashar, doesn't lack anything. And so there's that beautiful connection between being within the divine presence and being within the presence of the female who is providing this nurturing environment. If we acknowledge it, if we respect it, then and honor it, we won't lack anything. So thank you so much for that. Let me call upon some others who are so eager to speak, and I'm so grateful, Rose. Thank you so much. Let me call upon Sherry, Steve, and then Catherine. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question about in the early part of the Parsh that they talk about all of these soldiers that were available, and a total of 600,000. That's as big as Napoleon got with his Grande Armée, which was 400,000 and 200,000 with all of the countries surrounding them that joined in. And the logistics is enormous. How could they do this in biblical times?
How could they? I have no idea. It's amazing, it's mysterious, and it's wonderful. So, but thank you for, thank you for bringing up Napoleon, and thank you for bringing up, once again, the scale upon which human beings often do go to war with one another. And what a disaster and shame it is that happens. But so, and
when was the Parshat written? Was it written during those times in medieval Europe or after?
No. This text is is written before the Common Era. So and as we can read this text as a reporting of events that happened, and I honor that. The way I read it is that this is a work of art that is trying to give articulation to something that was experienced and encountered. And we take these level of details and facticity as we will. I draw from it the meanings that I see embedded within there. So let me invite, Sherry, did you want to say something as well?
Well, I had just a thought about Shabbat and about how we're driven, as humans, we're just driven by anxiety, one anxiety after the next, and that Shabbat is just a time to stop the world and get off and just contemplate peace. And I find that the Shabbat has always been problematic for me because I really am not good at stopping and reflecting, and it's really very difficult.
The fact that you say it's difficult at least betrays your incapacity to do this, because what it evidences is that you do it. It's just you may have difficulty doing it, but you've experienced these moments. I know you have. I know that you've experienced moments of release from the stress and anxiety that the world can insert itself into our lives with. So yes, it's difficult. And that's what this whole body of work is trying to do. This whole body of work is acknowledging that the world isn't perfect, and our purpose for being here is not to leave it behind and go to a perfect world. Our reason for being here is to transform ourselves and the world around us so as to make this a place where God dwells. We don't seek to go away from this place to where God dwells. We seek to make this world a place where the divine dwells. And it's a body of wisdom that provides us many different spiritual practices and ethical guidelines to help overcome the inborn sense of separation, fear, and anxiety, and to return to that which has always been our spiritual heritage, and that is of integration, attachment, peace, and fulfillment. So thank you so much for sharing with great honesty what you experience and your own work in this area. Catherine, please share with us, and then Mark, and then Robert.
Yes. Just building off what Rose was saying about the patterns being formed in this parshat. We basically have 3 initial patterns. First, we have a list of the census. Then we have what seems to be almost like a square with the east, west, north, south. And that is the military encampment. And then we end with a circle where there is to be no census at all. And I was thinking basically that the pattern as a whole forms a spiral.
Thank you. Say a little bit more about the spiral, just a little bit more, Catherine.
Okay, well, it leads us through these concerns with numbers, then we get to 0 and move out again.
There you go. That's what that now I really get what you're saying, and it's so lovely. So the notion here is not to like just be settled. The notion is to move through it and enter into a different place. So that's this notion that our artist is sharing about. He says it's never supposed to be a beginning or an ending. It's just supposed to be a transition. And that's what you're sharing with us. Let me call upon Richard here, and then we'll get to Mark and Robert. Yeah.
I just want to respond to a couple of things, but the idea of the spindle, of the distaff side, of the feminine, of the weaving, that's what that's referring to when you say it's a spindle or spiral. It's the feminine. And I want to say that
Richard, we can't hear you. We're having trouble hearing you.
Okay, I'm saying the spindle where the is the distaff for spinning is a precursor to weaving, which is the female side of the family, the distaff side. And it is about using the existential situation to readapt, to put the blanket over the union of the two people in Song of Songs. And the Bible does tell us that God created man and woman, created the human being, man and woman made he them. Doesn't say that they're separate. It says each of us are that, and the idea is to put it together. Sometimes hard to do because this is about combining. In fact, they do not have the insignias, they're not there. And the footnote says, well, everybody knew what they were anyway. We don't know what they are. They're lost in antiquity. And my thought was, well, wait a minute. That's honoring yourself. That's kind of iconic. That's kind of a drawing a picture of God. You can't do that. You've got to be part of the whole. And but yet it is about union. Doesn't happen in maybe the ultimate journey is what diaspora is, continuing to be, to get to our personal development so that we can love and to give up war. And yet this is very much about war. And we're facing that. Well, today is the anniversary of a big war, and we're also involved in one now. And we all know what that one is and how terrible that is and how hurting it is. And lastly, I wanted to bring up this business about Napoleon. And this to me is my new prayer, and you'll recognize it. Save my soul from evil, Lord, and heal this soldier's heart. I'll trust my soul to thee, O Lord. I'm done with Bonaparte.
Amen. Thank you, Richard. Let me call upon Mark and Robert, and then David, Susan. Mark Levinstein, please.
Yeah. So
Oh,
the picture you painted for us of the Diglo, I first have to say when I saw the word gigolo came to my mind, but that's an aside. But I've been thinking a lot about the society, the we society and the me society lately, and what's the relationship between the standard, the banner, the Diglo, and a talus? And the talus provides that warmth, that comfort, that shelter. You get married under a talus as a couple. And I don't see us flying our collective or group banners as much.
Yeah.
As our ritual practices have evolved. I'm just thinking about that.
Mark, we're certainly living in a world that's spinning, centrifugally spinning us ever more perilously into our individuated selves rather than centrifugally weaving us, bringing us into some kind of new union. So thank you for pointing all that out. Do you want to share something more further?
It just kind of goes with Catherine's, geometric, mathematical construct as well. That the movement between.
You're bringing up this notion about the dangers that are represented, as I hear what you're saying, the dangers that are represented by the way we are kind of spinning further apart from one another, and that's why this material here is reminding us that we need to have both ethical and spiritual practices that overcome that tendency of entropy, of spiritual entropy as well as social entropy. So thank you for bringing all that to mind. Let me call upon Robert and then David and Susan.
Well, thank you again for a lovely evening, and I appreciate all the comments. I'll try and be coherent. As I'm listening to the conversation, the concept of peace has come up a couple times. And when I think of the study of the Torah that I've been a part of now for about a year and a half, maybe more, it's a story of movement. It's a story of movement in and a story of movement out. Things that we should do within, things that we must do without. And it reminded me that peace, we often look for peace only within. We must look for it within, but it can never live within unless we do good without. And nature is a proof of this. And I've used this example many a time, the Red Sea. Water flows in, water flows out, there's life, albeit it has shrunk over the years because of the aquifer. The Dead Sea, water flows in, nothing flows out. So if we look at nature and if we look at the Torah and all scripture and look at our own lives, we see that they confirm each other. The second thing is that in Numbers 4:15, there was the mention of shall not touch any holy thing lest they die. And what could be more holy in a general sense, in the sense that we come in contact with day to day and live with day to day, than the temple of our own souls? And so here we have an outward expression of a sacred area where we don't touch the holy. Only Aaron and that family are allowed to touch the holy. And that reminds me that within, it's our higher natures. It's our higher natures that create that touch of the holiness. But we can easily defile ourselves. And then I think there was one other brief comment. I loved what he said, the the artist said about the value of images is to remind the self of its limitations and at the same time of the possibility of an endless journey. Now I'm going to put it to the test. Is it true within our own selves, and is it true in nature? And the answer is yes. Because if we look at the value of images, we look at nature, we see limitation, we see journey, we see story, we see movement. We look at our own life, we see story, we see journey, we see movement. We can rest, but never with the idea of standing still. And part of the problem, I believe, of our times is that perhaps some have become so spoiled that they think life is just about me and sitting. I'm not a young guy, but I know if I don't do something, it's hell for me. Something that is of some benefit. I'm just miserable inside. And I think that's true for all of us. So, those are my comments. Thank you again. I always appreciate these evenings and value them.
Thank you, Robert, for your beautiful words and beautiful insight. And what you painted for me was this sense of the complementarity of spirituality and ethics. The spirituality to dig within one's interior self, to discover a truth that's there, and to refine one's character, and that has no value unless one expresses it through ethics, unless one expresses it in one's relationship with others. And that indeed was, of course, the message of the early prophets, who said, blind obedience and rote following of rituals doesn't do anything. And what you need is to attend to the widow and the orphan and the stranger, and to express one's spiritual insights through one's ethics. So thank you for bringing all that to the surface. And let me call upon David and Susan.
I envision from this Parsha something similar to what Catherine described. I envision a marching column in chunks of three tribes, the Mishkan with the Levites, 3 tribes and 3 tribes. And then I envision the columns not marching, it's stopped. And we have a circular arrangement with 3 tribes to the north, 3 to the east, 3 to the south, and 3 to the west, making a tent city. And my picture is far less military than what the tone of what we've been talking about. It's true that the census is in terms for the 12 tribes of those of military age. Also true that there is some combat in the very beginning of our story in the wilderness that we do very badly at. But to me, what the description is a community, and how it's organized like a city with residential quarters in 4 directions, and a core, which is both a physical sanctuary and the most holy people, the Levites and the Cohens, in the middle of the city. And so I'm just saying that our feeling that it's possible to overemphasize the military aspects. We're 40 years in the desert. We spend a lot of that time camped in a circular way, and far less time moving in a column that you can think of as military, but it's really 90% moving a tent city from one place to another. So I'm just saying that this is visionable as a community organism, an amoeba changing its shape depending on circumstance, what it's trying to accomplish, etc. So it's not the Grand Army, even if it includes the Austrians and the.
Thank you, David. And Susan, did you want to share something as well?
Yeah.
When our children were 3 and 5, David went back to school full-time to get his bachelor's. And he went to school all day long and studied all night long. And he suddenly disappeared from our family, and our family was broke. And I finally
She's
said to him,
exaggerating for effect, folks.
no, not really. And I finally said to him, I said, this isn't working. And he said, okay, I'll stop.
Okay, thank God, I'll stop.
That's what he said. And I went, no, let's see if we can do something different. And so we decided that he would be home by 5 p.m. on Friday night every week. And we would sit down together. I mean, we went to the extent of tablecloths and silver and china and everything. And we made Shabbat. And it was a family effort. And it was magic. It was absolute magic.
Yeah. And so this is a beautiful image with which to draw us to a conclusion, which what you're saying is we have choices to make. We don't always have the choice about what the external environment around us is like in its entirety, but we have the ability to make a choice about how we're going to address it, and whether we're going to be part of that world that seems to be so fractured, and to assimilate the fracture within ourselves as well, and only enhance the fracturing of the world, or whether we're going to choose to live a life that is more cohering and attaching and connecting and fulfilling and peace-filling. And David, you shared this, you reminded us this notion of building upon what Catherine said about the circularity motion is there as well. And I'm reminded of the study we did when we read about the Israelites crossing the Sea of Reeds, and that we had this beautiful interpretation from Rabbi Epstein, who said the men sang, with Moses' leadership, said, we will praise God. And Miriam and the women said, praise God. And Epstein said what that indicated was that Moses and the men were still living within this framework of separation, of time, of linearity, of binariness. And Miriam and the women had transcended that. And they were living in a dimension of circularity, and where there's a capacity to be connected, and where everything is this immediate and fulfilling, because that's what you have chosen to experience the world as, and what you've chosen to add to the world. And so I just want to say that in a spiritual tradition, one doesn't come this way by oneself, and there is no truth but a truth that is shared. And so that is what we do here together. We create this a sense of attachment with this community of readers and interpreters, and hopefully we create a bigger and bigger circle dance. And so for that, I'm so grateful to be partners with you in that dance. So grateful for each one of you and your contributions and your participation and your presence and your powers and your gifts. And I look forward to our regathering next time. God bless you all. Be well, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Be
you.
well,
Amazing.
everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah.